chapter 16. I know it's been discussed and kind of brought up several times in this church over the years, and it's honestly refreshing being able to go to the different Gospels to see a different outlook or a different viewpoint in the ministry of Christ. And even in discussion, when we get into the particulars of little nitpicking topics, like was there two people here or one person here, I appreciate the different viewpoints. Can I get taken out of the monitors? It's kind of causing a reverb up here. But to be able to just see that, because I have a different image than you will when I picture what Christ is saying and when he's teaching. Some people see a more formal, see a more formal Jesus when he's teaching and he's giving a sermon, much more like a church service. He's up talking in front of everybody, giving this grand teaching. But often when I'm picturing and reading through what I'm seeing, what Jesus has to say, I'm picturing more of a conversation with some friends, a more laid back. That's just the image I've always had. I've always pictured him giving these deep spiritual truths, but always in a very approachable and honestly laid back fashion. Now, there's definitely times we read where there's nothing laid back about what he just said. Some people have trouble believing that he might actually be that stern. But as we go through the book of Luke, and God bless the youth group, they are tired of hearing the same intro over and over, but it's something that needs to be stuck in your head. Luke gives many angles of Christ's teachings, but one of them is he is fed up with the religious. He is looking for the faithful. Jesus is a religious figure. Shouldn't he be interested in the religious? No, he doesn't want the religious. He wants those that are on faith. He doesn't want people that are following rules. He wants people that truly have the message of God in their hearts. And we see time and time again as we've been going through the book of Luke, and honestly, I'm going to give you the spoiler right now. This is literally the teaching I just gave the youth group last week. But I thought it was a great teaching that you guys needed to hear. But he goes on and on throughout. He calls out those that are following rules to look good, and he calls to him those that just want to be saved, those that want to be near him. They're not worried about what other people have to say. There's many examples throughout the Gospels of people that just laid down their pride to get close to Jesus, laid down their safety to get close to Jesus. We have Roman officials who wouldn't dare even get caught talking to a Jew unless he's ordering them to do something. But they're chasing him down because they believe that he can save them, that he can save their family. The woman who had the trouble with blood, if she was found in that crowd, she would be immediately killed. And anybody that tried to save her would also be killed, because she had broken the law. But she didn't care. She knew Jesus could help him. Which brings us to where we're at in 16. He's gone on several times just giving this message of it's not about the rules, it's not about where you are or how good you are, it's about being faithful. Luke 16, now he was also saying to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and this manager was reported to him as squandering his possessions. And he called him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, for you can no longer be a manager. So he jumps into a business example to give this truth. He's given something that the people around him could understand. And what we have here is A wealthy person has a person running his business. He's running his accounts, running his estate for him. And he finds out he's been skimming off the top. He's been cheating. He's been trying to do well for himself, not so much for managing his master's estate. So immediately, not a great guy that we're talking about here. Manager finds out and says, tell me what you've been doing because you're fired. You're done. I'm cutting you off. You're done. The manager said to himself, what shall I do since my master is taking the management away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig and I'm too ashamed to beg. Okay, so what do I do? I just got fired. I've had this squishy job, this nice, easy street job of just managing someone else's estate. Easy enough, hey, do this, make sure that's done, take care of this, I'll balance the checkbook, all that stuff. Fairly laid back work. But he's been found out that he's cheating the books. He's been squandering away this manager's possessions. Maybe he spent a little too much on that weekend out with the other laborers, things like that. Whatever. Picture how he's mismanaged this, however you wish. It's not necessarily the point. The point is, he's getting fired. And he takes a look back and says, well, I'm not strong enough to start digging ditches. And I'm still a little too proud to just start begging on the streets. So what do I do? What is the man to do? Well, his success came from one place, and he's going to continue to use it here. I know what I shall do, so that when I am removed from the management, people will welcome me into their homes. And he summoned each one of his master's debtors and began to saying to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said, take your bill, sit down, quickly write 50. Then he said to another, how much do you owe me? 100 measures of wheat. He said, take your bill and write out 80. Give me 1 second. Every time I take my thumb off the page, it was blowing over and I couldn't read. So he says, I think I know what I can do here. So I'm not in complete poverty. And so I might have some friends after this job has been cut away from me. I'll call all the people that owe my master money. You guys, come here. Here's what we'll do. How much do you owe my master? 100 oil? Go ahead and just write out that I can have 50 of it. We'll call it even. And what about you? 100 wheat? Can you do 80? Okay. Debt's settled. Cutting you loose. Settling your debts. You guys are free to go for less than what you owe. Sounds like a great deal. Now this is a great guy. I'm getting off on a debt for only 50% of what I owe. Sounds great. So what he's done is he's shown favor, gained favor with those that were in debt by showing mercy. I think we're starting to see a little bit of what the lesson here is, but we'll continue on here, because the master's response might actually kind of throw you off here. His master praised the unrighteous manager because he acted shrewdly. For the sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own kind than the sons of light. I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of the wealth of unrighteousness, so that when it fails, they will receive you into eternal dwellings. What? Did Jesus just tell us to make friends with unrighteous people? Did he just say cheating the system was a good idea? Exact same response the youth group had last week. Blank stare. I love it. What he's saying here is the unrighteous know each other well. The righteousness doesn't relate so well with it. But one thing the unrighteous can agree on is, you good to me, I can be good to you. What he's honestly saying here is, don't completely sever yourself from the world, because guess what? Those are the people you're ministering to. Those are the people you're reaching out to. Those are the people you're supposed to be sharing the love of God to. So instead of sinners accept Christ or go to hell, show love. Show God's love that you're supposedly teaching, that you're supposedly preaching. I'm not saying because this isn't a license to sin. This isn't a license to live a life of immorality, of unrighteousness. This is a license to relate, a license to be approachable. The master wasn't proud that his manager got one last cheating scam over on him. He wasn't happy about that. He was happy that the manager showed wisdom in getting in good favor with these people, knowing that when times would be hard on him, the manager, he now had friends who would come to him. So Jesus turns around and says, I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of the wealth of unrighteousness, so that when it fails, they will receive you into eternal dwellings. He who is faithful in very little thing is faithful also in much, but he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous also in much. It's a lesson in working with what you got. It's a lesson in working with what's around you, being effective with what you've been provided. Your ministry, because every one of us has a ministry. Every one of us is called to be a witness. Nothing is more powerful in your witness to those around you than your gospel, your testimony. The gospel according to you. The gospel according to Ron. The gospel according to Patty. We all have a gospel message of how our lives were affected by Christ. It's your testimony. Your testimony is powerful because there's no arguing it. It happened. It's you. It's your truth. You shared it. You lived it. You can attest to it. It's your witness. And part of that gospel testimony is being real, being honest. Not using fancy church words, not using basically pull out a theological commentary and use the biggest words you can find. We're not worried about that. We're not worried about whether or not you understand how the Trinity works. We're not worried about whether or not if you under soteriology or eschatology. Who cares? What is your message of Christ? And how can you use what you have right now to share that message? Be faithful in the little things, the small things, the what doesn't seem to matter. This morning was a little bit of a hectic morning for myself and Allie because it's a holiday weekend. Senior pastor's out and several other people are out. We're scrambling to take care of the little things that doesn't seem to matter. But then we get here and we're like, oh yeah, turn the AC on. Oh yeah, we probably should unlock the doors. These are all things that we never deal with because they're done by the time we get here. Get the coffee going. Turn around, we forgot donuts. But all these little things are part of ministry. It seems like it's a crazy idea, but when you add all those things up, they all mean something to somebody. Being faithful in those small things. Being in ministry isn't standing on a stage wearing a button-down shirt and talking about the Bible. It's a ministry, but it's not ministry. Ministry is taking what you have and making someone else's experience of Christ just that much better. Ministry is when someone asks your opinion and you give a godly response to how they should approach that problem. Ministry is having your phone on so you can get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning because someone's having a bad night. Ministry is agreeing to come and change a light bulb for someone that really shouldn't be climbing on a step ladder. Ministry is showing love in any way that you can with what you have. I'm not a great musician. I can work around a bass guitar. I'm not a great public speaker. I have enough understanding of this chapter to give you my angle, my view of it. I have enough understanding of theology, whether or not I remember all those big fancy words and definitions I gave earlier. I remember they were fancy theology words. I have enough understanding to not be up here and preaching heresy. I've challenged the youth group to start teaching one another. It's been a rocky start. I've challenged them to answer the questions when they come up. Not because I don't feel like answering their questions, but I want them to think about it. I want them to try to come up with an answer. I did go to Bible college, and I do have a few snippets of really wise information that I still remember from it. One of them, I don't think it was necessarily his fancy teaching, but it stuck with him because he said it to me, was you don't understand a thing till you can explain it to a 5-year-old. Can you fix a car? Do you understand it? Can you teach a 5-year-old to do it? Then you don't know how to do it. Do you understand Psalm 140? Can you explain it to a 5-year-old? Then you don't understand it yet. The reason I say that is because that's what I'm trying to impress upon the youth. Is your purpose isn't to sit in a folding chair and listen to Pastor Brian, Pastor Heath, or Pastor Glenn ramble on forever about something in this old book. Your purpose is to know it, to understand it, to be the future church. Trust you with the little things. That's why we've made an effort over the summer to get the youth to get involved, to do things, to be active. Because we want them to be where you guys are at. It's not that far away. It's coming rapidly. I want them to be as much of a scholar as I am when it comes to this leather-bound book. I want you guys to be as much of a scholar as I am. Hopefully better about this leather-bound book. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the use of unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you with true riches? And if you have not been faithful in the use of that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. So there's the charge. There's the mission. You've been provided little. You've been given what you have. Be faithful in it. Use it wisely. Because if you can't be trusted with little, who's going to give you more? You squander away what you have already, who's going to entrust you to give you more? If you're loaned something and you don't treat it well, why would we give you one of your own? This is what God has entrusted us. He's given us our lives, our ministry. Whether you understand what that ministry is or not at the moment, you have a ministry. There's no useless servant of God. They all have something they are called to do. And so, He's given you this. Here it is. Make use of it. Be powerful in it. But understand that that is given to you. It's on loan. This life is on loan to us to do what we are called to do. God has offered us this time to make a decision to serve Him and to serve Him well. No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one or love the other, or else he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. And understand, not all of us have been given the same measure of wealth. And I truly believe, and I honestly hate to say this, and it's hard to say, but you're not as rich as the next guy because God knows that you won't handle it well. I know when I have a few extra bucks in my bank account that aren't immediately being handed off to a bill, a debt, a car repair. When I got that extra cash, I tell myself, be a good steward of this, save it, because you might need it later, and then I see something stupid on Amazon, and for some reason hit buy it now. God knows I'm not good with money. That's why He doesn't let me win the lottery. He knows I won't handle it well. God knows us. He's provided us just what we need. He provides us all that we need. Because it's easy to start worshiping that dollar sign. It's easy to start worshiping how well off you are. We've all been in that point where there's that toy, whatever it is, the nice car, the bigger TV, whatever your hobby is. I don't know, what does regular people do? I'm on a computer most of the time. Fish, there you go. We've all got sucked into paying attention to that thing more than anything else. It's grabbed our attention. It's all that we've thought about for the past couple of weeks, months, years. It's what you start identifying yourself about. I know several car guys that, honestly, their wives know not to make a demand of the car or them because they know where the answer is going to be. Good thing you can still sleep in the car is what I told them. But people get sucked up in the worldly things. They get caught up on the things that are tangible here in their hands. You can't serve two masters. You can't serve God and the world. You can't serve God in your wealth. So in what you've been entrusted in, the things that you've been given, remember who has provided it to you, who has allowed it to be, who has allowed you to have these things. He's given them to you as a part of your ministry, of how you serve Him. Like I said, it doesn't have to be standing on a stage talking about God and teaching people some spiritual truths. It can be simply being available to your fellow brother and sister in Christ. Be a friend. Be a mentor. You guys don't understand. God is constantly teaching truths to you, whether or not you have the Bible open or not. Many spiritual truths that I understand that have stuck with me the Bible wasn't there, God got that message to me anyway. He will get it to you. Now, it's a lot easier to read it and understand it than learn it in the hard life lesson. Trust me. It's all here. Pick it up. It'll save you a lot of trouble. But God has provided everything to you for your ministry. Now, like I said at the beginning, Jesus has been at odds with the religious establishment of the day, the religious leaders. Now, he's just given this message, he's given this teaching about being good stewards of the ministry you've been given, being content and being responsible with what you've been given by God. Everybody's favorite person walks in, the Pharisees. No servant can serve two masters. You cannot serve God and wealth. Now, verse 14, now the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, were listening to all these things and scoffing at them. You can't serve God and money. Pharisee in the back, ha! That's funny. You got to understand, they've been conditioned, and these Pharisees believed the bigger your bank account, the more blessed by God you were. The finer the clothes you wear, the more blessed by God you were. The bigger waistline you have, the more blessed by God you were. This was all the understanding, and this is honestly what they were teaching their people. The reason that they had nice clothes, and the reason that they had all this money, and the reason that they never went hungry was because they were more righteous than them. Cannot serve God and wealth. Can't have the two masters. You'll love one or hate the other. Jesus' response, he said to them, "You are those who justify yourselves in the sight of men, but God knows your hearts. For that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God. The law and the prophets were proclaimed until John. Since that time, the gospel of the kingdom of God has been preached, and everyone is forcing his way into it. But it is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one stroke of the letter of the law to fail." So he turns to them and says, in not so many words, God knows your heart, and it makes him sick. You do everything in the sight of man. You make it all look good in the sight of man. You're trying to impress all those people around you. Your fine clothes and the coins you're willing to just toss to make yourself look good. You make sure everybody sees how much you're pouring into that offering plate. You say the fancy words. You give the long, drawn-out prayers. But it isn't to worship God. You're doing it to impress the people around you. So where's your heart in the ministry? Is it to look good, to make sure that everybody knows you're a good person? Is the language you use outside of these church walls to impress people? You're constantly reminding people that you go to church so that you're a trustworthy person? Or is it because you want them to know you are a child of God and you have a master in heaven, and guess what? He has a message for you that's kind of important. It has something to do with that, eternity thing. I have a good friend that I've spent many years trying to be a witness to him. And I've gone about the route of, hey man, you really should come to church with us. And I've gone around the route of, get your butt in church. But honestly, the most he's ever learned about God isn't in what I'm saying, but how I respond. He actually told me this. It's like he understands what a good Christian is because he's called me at 4 o'clock in the morning drunk, and he actually had enough wherewithal not to drive home. And I was there in 10 minutes. Angry that he woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but I was there to get him. That I've given a calm outlook on several problems he's had in his life. And it wasn't telling him he's stupid, unless he really was just being stupid. But it was wisdom that he didn't understand how I could have came to. Honestly, I don't get it either, because I am not the smartest man either. I've done some stupid things. But he's finally picking up that old King James Bible that his grandfather gave him. He's finally starting to give consideration, because it's no longer a Christian that is telling him that he's a horrible person. And it's no longer a Christian that's saying one thing and doing the other. It's finally someone that's just being honest. It's like we're all screw-ups. We're all sinners. We're all sinners, but we've been made into saints. Not by anything that we do, but simply because we knew we couldn't. We turned to God and said, we can't do it. We can't handle it. But that was the witness that started at least getting him to read it. Now, he hasn't came all the way around, and God, I pray about him every day about it. But it was the authenticity, being real. Not approaching him with the Christian lingo, the same old sayings over and over, but just showing my life to him has started to turn him, to get him to understand it. In all honesty, where everybody finally settles down when we've all done the church shopping thing, hopping Sunday to Sunday to different churches. We've all been there. But I challenge to say, what finally gets you to stay at a church is because the people seem real. They're honest. And that's what I've appreciated about this church here, is that we don't have anyone pretending. We don't have anyone trying to make themselves look good. We've had it in the past, but in the end, we all know we're just working with what we've been given. We have former addicts here. We have people that haven't been faithful in their marriages here. We have people that have given up. You got a former witch up here teaching to you now. We've been down on our lucks. Some of us even tried to end it prematurely, and it didn't work out. Why is my testimony effective to you guys today? Because I'm just being honest with you. I want to tell you that I've spent 3 months poring over this very passage, trying to come across with the most eloquent and most powerful message I can come across, but in the end, I'm just telling you how I understand the passage. I've done some homework. I looked into it, made sure I'm understanding what I'm reading. In the end, a testimony is going to be more powerful than anything to you. So be honest. Be real with those around you. Let your gospel truth be your ministry. Work with what you've been given. You don't have to go out and found a new church and build a new building and travel across the world, because airfare is expensive. You got a ministry, you got a wealth of people that need to know the truth around you right now. The law and the prophets were proclaimed until John, and since that time, the gospel of the kingdom of God has been preached, and everyone is forcing his way into it. The law and the prophets were preached over and over. They were teaching the same thing that is being taught right now, right in front of you, that God is gracious and he is going to save those that are faithful to him. Those that have faith in that he will save them. That's God's family. That is the children of God. Those are the ones that call Abraham father. The message has never changed. The ultimate goal was the same back in the Old Testament and it is now. Abraham wasn't considered righteous until he was faithful to God, that he showed faith. That's what made him righteous. Moses, he was faithful to God. He believed him. But guess, if you read through Moses' story, he was complaining the entire time. Jonah, he was faithful to God. He believed God, but he tried to do the exact opposite because he didn't like that idea. But he was faithful. And he is one of the ones that we turn to learn a lesson even today. The law and the prophets were proclaimed until John the Baptist showed up and said, hey, guess what? He's here. Messiah is coming. No, really this time, he really is here. And people were clamoring. Thousands were coming to hear Jesus preach. It is easier for heaven and earth to pass away. Everything around you can cease to exist, and it is easier for that to happen than the Word of God to be taken away. Finishing up this section here, there is one last little bit here that seems to just kind of come out of nowhere, but we'll look at it here. Everyone who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and he who marries one who is divorced from a husband commits adultery. Why is he throwing that in? What? He's giving this example of marriage because it ties in exactly with what he's just been talking about. Being a faithful servant, being faithful to what you've been given, being faithful to what you have and working in it. Your ministry should be a marriage relationship to you. It should be close to you. You should be tied in with it. Not jumping from plan to plan or, oh, these people have a better ministry over here for me to work in. I'm going to get over there and start working there. Oh, this one actually sounds a lot better. Be faithful to what you have. Be faithful to where you're at. I've known several in the past that they're not chasing what God has them to do. They're chasing what looks better, the greener grass on the other side. God is taking this concept and attributing it. Jesus is saying it's like committing adultery in a marriage. Don't chase a ministry because this congregation is bigger than the other, so there's a good chance you might get paid better over here. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that some people get paid in their ministries. But don't chase because it sounds like a good idea. And I've been to some of these Christian concerts and music festivals, and they start throwing all these like missionary trips and adopt a child in Africa things out to all these people that are emotionally just charged right now. You got them hyped up at this concert, and then you're going to start throwing mission trips at them. Hey, go to Russia, Siberia, South Africa. That is not the time to choose a ministry. Not when it's an emotional, off-the-cuff decision. Ministry needs to be a decision that you are going to hold to. Grab hold of it. Make it your own. There's a philosophy of ministry that I've pressed on everybody here. That Glenn, I'm sure he presses it. I know my dad does, that when you get into a ministry, a formal ministry where you're doing something around the church here, don't just do it. Make it your own. Own the ministry. One of the things when I was told we want you to be the children's pastor, the youth pastor. And Patty can attest to this. One of the things I did was step back, come off of the ministry, stepped away from it, made the curriculums optional. Step back, I kind of gave a loose schedule of when people need to be there. But in the end, it was, you're the teacher. This is your ministry. It sounds like I'm trying to throw responsibility off, but really in the end, I want people to own their ministry and come to the leadership when there's a problem, when you can't figure it out. It's your ministry. The media booth, we can teach you everything you need to do in there, but in the end, it needs to be yours. You got to have a passion to do it. Playing up here, I don't want anybody that can just follow some music. I want people that are truly worshiping God up here on the stage with us. I forget you guys are there because I'm focused on up high. Sometimes I look a little goofy back there, but I'm into it. I'm enjoying it. I'm in the presence of God singing his praises. Not very well. I don't sing well. Most of the time the mic's turned off. But I'm there praising God. The youth group. I've told those young adults, they're not children. I've told them, here's the phone number, here's where I live. Anytime, anything you need, Pastor Heath is there for you. I will answer your questions. I will help you out. If you find yourself in a very bad situation, call. I will be there. Because you're my ministry. You're my family. Those kids are like my children to me. But that is the philosophy we have to have in ministry, is it's not a job. It's not a volunteer task. It's yours. It's your ministry. The prayer ministry of Christy, she has made it her own. And she has reignited a passion for prayer in this church. We often forget. There's a nursery back there. They love them children, and they are showing them the love of God every week. And finally, there's those that you don't even realize are doing things here, but they have taken ownership of it. That yard gets done by the guys, and there's no praise. There's no parade because they got the lawnmower out. They faithfully do it, and they're serving God. They've taken ownership of it. It is their ministry. It drives me insane when I hear people say, Tammy can handle it. She doesn't work. She doesn't have a job. Ooh, don't let her catch you saying that. I grew up seeing The Wrath of Mama. You don't want it. She is the reason the lights are on. She's the reason there's a building. Because she pays the rent. She pays the mortgage. She organizes so much. She doesn't want to be thanked. She doesn't want to be praised. Honestly, she just wants you to let her in her office and leave her alone. Let her do her thing. She'll handle it. She owns that ministry. We all have a ministry. You have a ministry. Now, whether it's a formal task or if it's being a witness, it can be both. Own your ministry. Take what you've been provided and be a good steward of it and make it work. That is your mission. That is your calling. Don't squander what you have.